All right, Custa. What's up, Custa? Custa, Scott Custa Kennedy. How's it going? How's it going?
Hello, hello. Me.
It is you. It is you. Right, I've done one of these with Johnny already, which released
Okay.
last week. I'm actually recording it a day after I did Johnny's. I'm smart, you see. I pace out my content. I love to do that.
Smart.
And make sure I have a constant flow of content. I asked Johnny the same thing, and I'm going to ask you. If you could describe yourself given the chance, acting like this is a job resume, how would you describe yourself? I want to compare this to Johnny without you seeing it.
Hi. My name's Scott Custa Kennedy. I am an Australian retired Overwatch
Mm.
League player. I played in 2018, 2019 for the Dallas Fuel and the Los Angeles Valiant. Since then, I have moved over to the talent side of the Overwatch League. I've been doing the desk since 2020, which has been almost exclusively online, which sucks. But now we're here and, talking about esports and that type of stuff, which hopefully is going to be interesting because it's always funny talking to people about like the deep dive of the I have a cat attacking my door.
I do hear the faint
Did
scratching.
you
That's
hear
quite funny.
the scratching? Hey, Salem.
I didn't hear the meow though, but I saw it. That was so
Get the
cute.
meow? All right, come on, guy. 1 second.
It's a 3-person interview now with the cat.
Hey, all right, well, we're starting. We don't want to go again. We're just going to run with the cat.
Yeah, we're gonna run with the cat. It's all good.
We're going to run with the cat. Okay.
You know what's funny? You give your answer to the describe yourself thing was the complete opposite of what Johnny did. Like complete
Johnny
opposite.
do?
Well, you're gonna have to find out. Actual like
Oh my
16-year-old building a resume is what Johnny did. Describing himself in many words rather than like your actual like, oh, I'm retired Australian, like Overwatch League player, whatever.
Yeah.
Johnny was like, I am confident I can work well together as a team. It was very funny. That's really good that I got two different answers to that. Funny thing is, I'm doing Mitch tomorrow, so we'll see what he says. He's gonna.
Oh god, I'm sure Mitch will do it better than both
just
of us.
major shit or worse. Well, depending on who's watching, I suppose. No, that's good. Obviously, yeah, man, it's kind of crazy you say that. It's mainly been online, which is like really awful because that was basically my experience too going into 2020 was like, oh yeah, here's the Washington homestand and the New York homestand, and then it's like, oh wait, we're just online now, like terminally online anyway, but now we're
it's just annoying because, as I said, like I was a player and I remember like when I was a player, like looking at like the watch point desk in 2018, 2019, the casters, and being like that seems like such a great gig. Like you're so in it and you're like so additive to the broadcast. You're so important. You like create storylines. It's just a lot of fun to be around as well. I did bits and pieces over that time. And then when I moved into it, it just completely changed because we've just been online, and that really takes so much away of just being talent, especially now that I've done more live events. Like just being in it with the people, experiencing it together. I think it just creates more hype and more excitement for doing your job as well. Because that's the hardest thing when you're, it's 3 a.m.
God, yeah.
doing the 2021 grand finals, and you're like waking up and you're like in your living room with no pants on, talking in front of a green screen, in front of a camera. And it's hard to just sort of get that sort of same level of momentum when you're doing talent.
No, especially at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Very awesome. Like waking up
Cool.
and trying to be excited is sometimes hard at the best of times when you have like Paris versus, Vancouver, but even worse so when you're at 3 a.m. or like, I don't know, Valiant versus like Seoul who just like end up getting stomped. It's pretty tough. You said just then that when you were a player, you kind of looked at the desk and looked at talent and were like, oh, okay, this looks pretty sick. Obviously that now it's quite obvious that you gave that a shot and it's been working out kind of well. But let's deep dive into some childhood trauma. Maybe not trauma, but what was your dream career before you became a player? Because I find this question quite interesting across the board because there are so many ridiculously wild answers. Like esports has just kind of brought us all together through games, but what people wanted to do before they got into esports, madness.
Yeah, because so when I was in high school, like my big saving grace is, I was a somewhat smart kid. I was really good at math and science. So like every person who's good at math and science, you go to your teachers and they're like, what should I do in university? And they're like, you should go into engineering. And I'm like, okay, I love engineering. I love things and building. So I did that. Out of high school, I went to do civil and structural engineering with a double degree in finance, which was great. I think one of the biggest things, like I was playing competitive games from when I was like 14, I would say 13, 14. I used to play like a lot of WoW, and I've always played a lot of
Okay.
video games as a kid. But when I was like 13, 14, Team Fortress 2 was like the first game I seriously got into competitive with. Like I just did it myself, played on Oz Fortress. I was not very good, but it just sort of was like my entry into that. So yeah, I played a lot of video games, but yeah, I did civil and structural for like 2 years. And that's when I started being like, hey, this is kind of boring. Like this is not very interesting anymore. So I actually took a gap year after my second year of finishing university, and then I just like I took a year off. Played a bunch of video games. I worked a lot. I worked at a pub in Adelaide. Shout out to the Duck Inn. And yeah, I just did that and played games. Really started to become more enamored with esports. At this point, I'm like really just watching a lot of it, doing a lot of it in my free time, but wasn't seriously considering anything until Overwatch sort of got announced. And I think when Overwatch was announced, that was like really the trigger. Like before that, I was never like, oh, I want to get into esports. Like people who have been like, I've played every new game since I was 13 trying to make it, right? That's not really me. Like I was doing it casually for Team Fortress 2. There's no money in it. There's no fame in Australian Team Fortress 2. So I just sort of did it, and I sort of was having fun with it and just using it for a passion. But when Overwatch started coming out, that was sort of the moment of, if I'm seriously going to take this forward, if I'm going to be a professional, I need to get out of Australia, because realistically, competing in Australia, the chances that you're going to make it to tier one is just so low, even regardless of talent, how much skill you have, just because it's so hard to get noticed. It's so hard to get access to funding, and teams and endemic orgs looking at you. So I moved to Canada, and that's really the beginning of my esports career. Is when Overwatch is in beta, I got access to the beta, and I just moved to Canada.
It's quite a symptom with like Australia as a whole, right? Because just the way I think about it always is, how long does it take to get from the UK, or now LA to be fair, to Australia? It's like 24 hours. Like I remember flying to Australia when I was 14. Whole, yeah. It took 22 hours or something ridiculous. And that was with a layover in Hong Kong, I believe. And like you said, because it's so isolated, you either form kind of a league there with esports, or you just try and branch out. With the UK, you've got Europe. With Australia, it's like, what else do you have? Like there's nothing kind of around you. What were the games originally that you kind of play competitively? You said Team Fortress 2, obviously, and like esports in general. Were you like a CS head? Like what was your like go-to game to kind of watch, like esports wise?
Well, so the game that I first started playing that was like more of a serious game was CS. Like my brother introduced me to Counter-Strike 1.0 when I was like 6, right? But I never I was the kid playing Dust 1, playing the random custom modes, like, oh man, I love the Warcraft version in CSGO. And I would just play that and grind that for like a really long time. So I did that. I played a lot of Smash, but like esports, Team Fortress 2, but the big one that was really like my gateway drug into esports is StarCraft 2. When StarCraft 2 first came out, that was the first time I really started like sitting up and be like, holy shit, like people do this for money. Because even in Team Fortress 2, there was no money in Australia, but there was also no real money in North America, right? People were still just doing it for love of the game and passion and that kind of stuff. So StarCraft 2 comes out, it gains all this hype, and I'm watching on GOM TV, I'm watching GSL Code S, I'm watching, Huck, I'm watching, Jinro, I'm watching like all of these Western guys head to Korea and just sort of like make it in some way. And even if they didn't make it, I just loved the content around it, like used to love watching like DJ Wheat, In Control, a lot of their sort of content they used to make around just like podcasts and stuff. So I really just sort of fell in love with StarCraft 2 scene. And that was, I think when I was 18, I remember actually sitting down and having a conversation with all the guys I played StarCraft 2 with, my brother's friends and stuff like that. Because my friends weren't gamers, like in high school. That's the unfortunate reality. They all played COD, but like, does that really count? There's just fun running around in pub lobbies. I was sitting around, they were like, when I was 18, they were like, if you could do anything, what would you want to do? Because this is, the crossroads of life at 18. And I was like, if I could be a professional video game player, that would be legit. And then, yeah, like I said that with like no intention of pursuing it at that time. And then, 3 years later, an opportunity arose with Overwatch.
What was that big first opportunity for you? You obviously said you got the beta, you moved to Canada for a little bit. Like, what was the first knock on the door for you?
Well, it's funny because you never really know the value of each knock on the door. Because I would say there's two of varying degrees. The first one was when I first moved to North America in Canada. I was playing Overwatch, just like there's no ranked system. We are literally playing the beta. You're playing with the same people. You're just like it's stomps left and right. No, remember, no one knows
Sounds
what
like
they're
Overwatch
doing
2
as well.
beta.
Yeah, well, there's like no hero limits. It was the definition of chaos. But a person by the name of Nicholas TJO, who was an old Overwatch head, if you've been around for a while, ended up reaching out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm putting together a team for just like the tournaments that are happening. We're trying to take it seriously. Like, we're not just like, oh, let's have some fun and cues. Like, we're trying to get the best players. We're trying to compete. We're going to be scrimming. Do you want to join?" And that's really what I needed because like I didn't have a team to like join and that kind of stuff. So I was like, sure, I'll join it. It's interesting because that team ended up having some like really good players. Like we had Shake, who was a coach of Boston Uprising, was a player in 2018. There was also Joe Meister was on that team when we first joined. So we all came together. Nicholas and Torque had a pretty interesting career. But funnily enough, that was more of a trampoline to more success because what happened is we never won anything as that team. We were Code 7. We ended up coming like, what was it? Like third in everything we did. But
Right.
there was team envy in the North American scene at that point. Like before they became the European one that like took over IDDQD and became dominant. Team Envy actually sponsored a team with like Cool Matt, Stoop, Tailspin, all those kind of guys. And they were the best in North America. Like we could never beat them. They were just like the top dogs. That team ended up folding at some point with Tailspin ending up moving to the European team and creating that Envy. So Cool Matt and Stoop, I'd been playing against them. And funnily enough, this is like this is early on in Overwatch esports where everyone's just trying to make a team with everyone whenever a team falls apart. So this team falls apart, and I have like buds messaging me, but like, "Hey, I'm gonna create my own team. You want to join?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to play with buds." But then Stoop of all people, and I respect this guy a lot. He's like the best. He messages me. We've never talked before, and he goes, "Hey, you want to start playing for mine and Cool Matt's team where we have a pretty cool opportunity? There's a chance we might get sponsored by Fnatic at this point." He's like,
Wow.
IDDQD's putting together a team. We're thinking we might get signed for Fnatic. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool, but I've kind of committed to this thing. And Stoop literally messages me in all caps and he's like, "Listen, buddy, you're going to come play for our fucking team, okay? And it's going to be great." And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I am going to play for your team. And that's how the Fnatic team ended up being made. And like I sort of entered into esports of like being a professional where I got paid by an endemic organization and competing and traveling the world.
Damn, so really twisting your arm by just spamming you with all caps. I mean, that's
Yeah, Matt tries to do it
pretty
all the time
reasonable.
now.
Yeah.
Ever since then, but it doesn't work as well on me anymore.
Doesn't work because Matt never follows through. So I mean, you know how it be. Look, talking about like initially then, how did you get discovered in that way? Because it was quick play, it was randoms, it was no hero limits whatsoever. Were you like literally just running into the same people over and over again and they were like, "Oh, this guy's kind of good"? Is that how initially happened?
I wouldn't say it's it was like the public quick play lobbies or anything like that. It was really just being a part of the scene. Like, we had Gosu Gamers weeklies happening every weekend. And I think those were really the most important things of just showing up, competing, performing well over a long form of time. Like, over a couple of months, like with that Code 7 team, I had continuous success with them. We kept improving. So then all of a sudden our team is on the map. People are looking at me. So whenever they needed, they were like, "Oh, we need a Zenyatta player or, a Mercy player." That's sort of what I was back then. Like the Zen Mercy was just so strong. That's sort of who I was, sought after. So that's really how you got your foot in the door, is just doing well in those Gosu Gamers weeklies. It was the definition of the wild, wild west. It's ZP and Hex in front of the world's shittiest green screens, just calling it, making it work, and just like having fun. And I'll go on a little bit of a tangent here
Yeah,
because
go.
it's I talk about these times, and obviously no one was making any money, and it wasn't as good as what we have now. But one of the things that I think is seriously lost on esports in the last, it hasn't even been that long, in the last 5 years, is that there's so much money and excitement around esports, and there's been so much investment in esports that every time a game comes out, it doesn't feel like Grassroots exists anymore, right? Even with Overwatch, such a big AAA title by Blizzard, it was still Grassroots. We were still just doing it for the love of the game because we wanted to. We weren't reliant on the Blizzard developers to run these tournaments or anything like that. And I think that just bred so much community and aspect of that you were just running it yourself. And I'm from Team Fortress 2, where that's the only way it ran. Valve
Yeah,
didn't
definitely.
care about Team Fortress 2 competitive at all. So that's what I loved, because people were just there because they wanted to be there. If you didn't want to be there, you would leave, right? And you weren't there because you're contractually obligated, because it was where the money was at, because it was the new hot thing. People were just there because they loved it. And I think that's lost so much on esports. And I think that creates such a, I don't know. Maybe it's just the negativity gets me down, but every esports, like you see it in Valorant, is the most recent one of they all their complaints just go through Riot in a lot of ways. They don't create anything themselves. They just like look at Riot, and if Riot's fucking up, they blame them. If Riot's doing well, they praise them. But a lot of people went to Valorant just because that's where the money's at in esports, and not because they love
For
the
sure.
game.
For sure. I mean, it happens with a lot of games, like you said, Valorant being the most recent one, where esports is almost on the checklist of things we need to do for Valorant. We need to create the maps. We need to create the weapons. We need to create an esports scene. That feels like part and parcel now of a lot of competitive games. And that's quite interesting that you say that and bring that up, because way back in like Team Fortress 2, like you said, Valve didn't really care. I'd say the most interaction they had was creating the genuine medals. And like, that was when I was playing TF2 as well, like ETF2L and stuff. That was like, oh, sick, I got like a medal and stuff like that. But there was no like prize pools or anything, or at least for not our divisions. And I really do wonder how many games would be around, like esports wise, if the developer or like the publisher didn't have like a big impact on the actual esports scene, or like kind of set it up. I think that's quite an interesting kind of topic to talk about, because there are so many now that are like, well, esports, but a lot of companies, to be fair, use it as kind of a marketing tool as well.
Unless you're Nintendo, where
Unless,
it's like, oh,
unless you're Nintendo,
kill it.
Nope. To be fair, kind of like not esports, but Wizards of the Coast are almost doing the same thing with D&D now. They're like charging people for D&D, which is like insane.
Well, that's
a
a
revenue
whole
split.
thing.
That's a whole new can of worms, but
We'll
it's
see
like
how that comes out of the wash.
Yeah, we'll see how that comes out. That's quite interesting though. Like you said, it's just kind of like you being spotted in Go-To Gamers, like going every single week, just competing every single week and then getting picked up. Were you originally a support player, by the way? Were you a Zen Mercy player, or like did you ever start as like DPS or a tank or whatever and then transition?
Even like every game I've ever played, it's been something that I've always enjoyed. And it's actually funny, I was talking about this recently, because it's not because like, oh, my mechanics aren't as good, I never could make it as a DPS, which is probably true. But that's not actually the reason that I like to play support. Out of the way, Bo. It's actually more because I really enjoy whenever a game exists, like World of Warcraft, Overwatch. In Team Fortress 2, I played Medic when I like was really taking it serious. Like when you're playing DPS, the stress that you have is you just need to perform and hit shots, right? The thing that I like the most about playing support in any game is that you are not just going out there and you just have to like min-max the damage. You do the same thing every time and you just have to do it better than the other people. As the support, you have to be reactive to the people around you. And that means that it is more engaging, because what you're doing is dependent on other people. So the right decision is always changing, because the variables around you are changing, and it's about getting value in different ways with everything moving on around you. And that's what I love about support, is that I think it is not just like a one-way track to just like success. Obviously that's more common in like a World of Warcraft, where it's like as a DPS you just do your rotation, while as healer you have to react to how people are losing health. It's the same thing in Overwatch in just a different scale. It's about, where do I get my value? Who do I heal? Who do I prioritize? Can I get damage out? Can I use my utility better? And there's just way more questions that I think you need to answer as a support on the fly. And I find that just more interesting when I play video games.
Yeah, I would say I kind of think along the same way. The way I think about support is nigh on the same. I think of it like a puzzle. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do I fix this situation? Whether it's like low health tracer, a high health hog, but enemy hog has no hook. Like sleep
Yeah.
is Suzu up. Like there's lots of little pieces to a puzzle that I need to figure out the best way to kind of solve it and as fast as possible. That's the way I kind of think about that too. Although I did start as a DPS player because I played Scout in TF2, but
Well, I
didn't end up
started a
working
scout in
out.
TF2 as well. But it's actually funny going back to the mechanics thing. Is like I was a fine scout, right? But I wasn't that good. But I always found medic really interesting, and I've actually reminisced with Brad about this. But
Oh, cool.
Brad, who is pure, who is now he's a comp ops person on the Overwatch League. You know, you see him around all the time at events. He was a player as well in like 2016, 2017. He played for Splice,
Oh
but
yeah.
he's one of the reasons in Team Fortress 2 that I actually made the transition to medic and the support role is because I used to watch his stream all the time. You know, he was on like a really good team. He was really smart. He had great calls, and I just used to love listening to him. And in 2016, I remember being absolutely wasted in a bathroom. This keeps happening, keep coming out of nowhere. But I remember being wasted at a bathroom in Atlanta for the E-League tournament. And yeah, I remember being like, I was like, hey man, I used to fucking idolize you. You were the best medic in TF2. He's like, thanks, man. So
We should get you some water.
yeah, we should reminisce at like some other time. And I was like, yeah. So it's always fun talking to him. And it's funny how like another little tangent. I don't know how much you can speak to this as well, Jack, of like when I was watching StarCraft 2, I had a lot of people that I respected, that I really loved, that I enjoyed. I love their content. You know, they're like pseudo heroes in a way, right? And it's like, it's funny once you make it to the scene, how you just sort of get to meet these people and
Yeah.
like, you know,
Oh
you
yeah.
learn about who they are, right? Like, you know, Pure was one of them. Like, he's just a really nice guy. I used to look up to Huck a lot. He was one of the best Western Protosses of all time. And yeah, he's ended up just like being a big part of the esports scene. And I got to see him be like, oh my God, that's Huck and stuff like that. And then another big one, which is funniest to me, is I don't know how much you know about StarCraft 2, but I remember meeting Whitera
Oh,
uh,
okay. Yeah.
at the Fnatic facility in London. Really nice guy, but he was one of those moments of like I had one of the strangest experiences ever with him. I
Okay,
can't.
go on.
No, I can't. I can't
Oh,
say it.
okay. Oh,
It's
god
kind
damn
of
it.
like he's a great guy, and don't get me wrong, but it was a
Yeah.
don't meet your heroes kind of moment of like a holy
Okay.
shit, the glass sort of shatters. But he's a really nice guy. But it was a weird experience, and that happens time and time again. And you start to realize that like people in esports, they are just people. Like
They're
at the
just
end of the like with
yeah.
celebrities and like sports stars, they are just so many levels and degrees away from you that you don't really get to meet them. But everyone says, oh, it's like when you meet them, they're just people. But
Yeah.
like that's esports as well. There are some people who are like, oh my God, I love this person. I would freak out if I met them. And I've seen it happen. You know, I've been with, you know, in Dallas 2018, like Seagull, people like freaking out to see Seagull and stuff like that. And
And
it's
you're
just
like,
like
he's just a dude. Like,
he's
he's
just
just
a
a guy.
guy. He's just
Yeah.
a he's
He's
just
just a guy.
he's just a guy who loves playing video games, and that's like so true in esports. It's even more so because people aren't like multi millionaires as much
Yeah.
anymore. So, well, XQC is now, but you know,
Yeah,
we don't talk
that's
about
true. Well, that's true.
it.
Yeah. Okay, XQC. I met him in a lift actually at BlizzCon once in
Oh, yeah?
2018. I was like, "Nice play, man." He was like, "Thanks, man." And then he fucking just left. I was like, "Cool. See you later. See you later, man." That was pretty
Later, man.
sick. Yeah, later.
He's a nice guy. I've had some of the most unique experiences with him as well. He's just such a
I've been
socially awkward person.
Yeah,
It's
I've
so
been
funny.
told a wild amount of stories about XQC, like a lot from like Brendan, Josh, and shit, because obviously he lived with them for a little while, and so
Yeah.
it was just like, damn, that guy, like he is really smart when it comes to like streaming.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he gets it.
but he 100% fucking gets it. But like to be a successful streamer is something that I've kind of always said as well. Like you need to be a degenerate. Like you just need to stream 16 hours a day. Like I remember when I used to watch him like a long time ago when he was playing Overwatch, you have the win-loss counter like you did and like you do now. And it's like 40 and 38. And I'm like, you played almost 80 games this stream. Are you kidding me? Like it's wild.
It's an addiction, and like this is another tangent here in a way, like for the people that really make it big in just like content creation, esports and stuff like that, it is an addiction. It is something that it is if it ever feels like it's work in a lot of ways for a long time, like you're just not going to make it, because like you genuinely just have to, this is what you want to do with all your being. And the biggest example I have of that is 2018, the start of the league. We have like the player summit to like inaugurate everyone to the league. And it was actually one of the coolest moments of my life, because like it was the first time that they got all the original 12 teams, every single player into a room, right?
That's awesome.
So like you have all the legends of early Overwatch just sitting in a room. You got the Lunatic High guys on Soul Dynasty with like Jae Hong, all that kind of stuff. You got Dallas Fuel, you got the MB guys, you got Seagull, you got XQC. Then you got like a bunch of the European legends. You got more Korean teams. You got all of the London Spitfire guys who have been dominating Apex as well. Like it was a cool moment. And it's just like, I remember because the passion that XQC had, he didn't realize it was an all day thing. And it got to like 6 p.m. and he's like, I got to go home and stream. And we're like, man, you can't leave. This is the player summit. They said we don't get out of here until 10. He's like, 10? No, I'm out. And he just left and went home to stream because he was like, he had to. And like, he looked like he was in physical pain, not having that ability to stream. Like, he's like, oh man, I just got to do it. Like, so that's, you know, people, I assume, talk to you all the time about how do I make it as a pro player? How do I make it as a content creator? How do I, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you really just, if you don't already know how to do it and love it and want to grind it, and you've just been doing it for a long time, you're already behind the 8 ball. You need to be someone who just wants to do this in their spare time and want to do it as every little bit of ounce of day that they have.
Yeah. Content creation and like streaming specifically. Like that is... people sometimes, like, I don't know why people ask me. I stream to like 50, maybe 70 viewers kind of thing. But it's like, oh, how do I become a streamer? I'm like, I would not do that at all. Like, I wouldn't stream at all. Like, if I wasn't doing what I was doing right now, I just wouldn't do it. There's no like benefit for me. I like doing it because we're off season, and even during the season I like doing it too, and I can just kind of interact with like my chat and my Discord and stuff, and that's really fun to me. But like, in general, I'm not like dumb. Those people wouldn't know me if I didn't do Overwatch League. Yeah. And that's why I have like it's a small audience, but you know, it's an audience. And looking at some of the stats on Twitch, at least, you can see Bren, for example, was in the top like 5,000 streamers, and Bren streams to 300 people. And it's like, wow, that's like, in the grand scheme of things, is that enough to make a full-time living? Probably not. He could, maybe, but if he's in the top 5,000 of streamers, like, and he's kind of making a living, you know, if he only did that, bruh, like, you've almost got no chance, especially streaming. Like, content creation's a little bit different, but like you said, you do have to be addicted. You do have to be just super hyper persistent and not get anywhere for a year and a half before you actually kind of make something of it. You kind of have to be obsessed. It's interesting one.
There's a lot of good videos of like the most successful. I was watching one recently about Mr. Beast. Like, I only like, you know, I've heard of Mr. Beast. I watched my first Mr. Beast video for the first time ever like a month ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I just like,
my first one was Squid Game, to be fair.
yeah, like we watched that one and that kind of stuff, and like, but I've never watched him, and it was interesting watching his content. But the more interesting thing is, like, I really like Carl on Mr. Beast videos, and a video popped up for me of like the story of Carl and like how he got there, and like he is like a prime definition of people like, oh, I'd love to be Carl, right? Like, he makes content, he's a streamer, he found success through Mr. Beast. But if you look at his story, he's like, oh yeah, I've been making content since I was like 14. I used to stream to no viewers for multiple years. And then he's like, I just used to grind it. When I started video editing for Mr. Beast, then I would do that for 12 hours. I would be on the set, and then I'd go home and I'd stream for like 6 hours. And like, no joke, that's kind of what you need to do. And then at some point, you need to get lucky. And lucky doesn't mean that you shouldn't put in work. Like, you need to put in the work and put yourself in the position to get lucky. But then you do have to get lucky. You have to have a breakthrough in some way that is going to make you not a one viewer Andy with all the other one viewer Andys and stuff like that. So I don't know how we ended up in this this tangent. Sorry.
No, it's a good one. No, it is. I think content creation as a game is very strange. And like you said, you could literally stream for 5 years to 4 viewers, and you're never going to get anywhere, because you, like you said, and I think that's very well put, it is about getting lucky, but it's also about working hard to put yourself in a position where you can get lucky. Like, that is that is the main step I think a lot of people kind of miss out on when they're like, oh, how do you become a big streamer? You just have to get lucky, right? You have to get rated. Well, no. Like, how are you going to get rated in the first place by like a big streamer or whatever? But it's hard. The game is hard. And like, I don't think we've ever been in a position where more kids want to be streamers, content creators, influencers, and stuff like that. I remember reading a study recently where it was talking about, because I was kind of curious, like dream careers for kids, which we'll kind of go on to in a minute. What do people want to be? For me, I was like, okay, I want to be a paleontologist, and then I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then I was like, games programmer. That's what I did my university degree on. I said, fuck that. But now kids are like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a streamer. And if all the kids at that age want to be that, like, think of how ridiculous your like competition is in a way.
And that's the issue, is that it's like just such a like saturated market right now, because in the past it was like you could just do it if like you were just ahead of the curve, right? Like you think of your like lyrics and summits and stuff like that. I don't want to slight them in any way. I love both of them. I've watched them so much in the past, but consider what they do compared to what they did in the past compared to what content creators are expected to do now. Is like, it's just such a ridiculous like chasm. And as you said, kids are just so aware. I went to Australia recently and met my cousin's kid. And she was like, they're like, oh my God, they know that you have YouTube and that you stream. They're like, they're really excited and nervous to meet you. I'm like, okay. First one walks up, she's like, how many subscribers do you have on YouTube? And I'm like,
oh no.
I'm not very big. I only have 22,000. And she's like, Mr. Beast has 120 million. And I'm like, I'm not Mr. Beast.
Yeah. Like, I don't make 0.001% of what he makes. Like,
yeah, like not even close. And like, it's kind of interesting because every kid has an iPad. Every kid has a phone these days.
Yep.
And everyone watches YouTube. And like, realistically, if you wanted to be a content creator, YouTube is where you should go. Like, I think there is way more money to be made on YouTube, just because I think it's easier to monetize it compared to Twitch. Twitch is like, most of your money is going to come through subscribers, which is hard to do compared to YouTube, where there are so many niches. If you find a niche of the internet that people are interested in, that you can do and you can make good videos on, you can make good money on YouTube. So
you can, and that finding that niche is sometimes quite difficult. And I think everybody has their own little niches, like with their hobbies. So for me, it would be like, oh, aquascaping and stuff. I watch like a lot of like fish tank related videos, but even less than like, oh, I am fish tank building, but it's like aquascaping.
Yeah. and that's everyone has passions, right? And that's really the best way to do it. Like, even for us, like, we're Overwatch League, right? There's a lot of people who's just like their hobby of like, they like Overwatch and they like Overwatch League and stuff like that. But like, both me and you, like, we make content and we are a part of it, but I wouldn't call either of us content creators. No. Like, as a whole, both of us make content as a hobby and like a bit of side cash.
Zero money.
Like
nothing.
And that's the word of warning that I put to a lot of people of like, it's not profitable to be a content creator. I think it's easy to look at the top 0.001%, the top 1,000 content creators and Twitch streamers and be like, oh, I want to do that. But if you listen to all of their stories, it's pretty shocking what they pull off.
Yeah, a lot of them either started very early or like had a hand in some way. I know there's a little bit of drama surrounding him right now. Obviously, we won't go into it, but like Mizkiv, for example, is quite an interesting story. I don't know if you've ever kind of heard about how he got his start. Was like, it's another like video editor cameraman story for another person that has a lot of drama around them, but for like Ice Poseidon, who was a very popular streamer at the time. And like, he was the cameraman for him. And then he kind of, worked his way into being a streamer, was a popular streamer, has now been, I think, let go from OTK, but like, started OTK. But I'm just giving that as kind of an example of.
I don't think he got released. Mizkiv got released from OTK?
There's
think
like.
Rich Campbell?
No, Mizkiv as well. There's a lot of OTK kind of falling apart.
OTK struggling. Holy crap!
They do be struggling right now. Yeah, but I kind of removed the names, but like, the story is they got their start somehow through someone else, and then they kind of built their own kind of brand out of it.
Yeah.
Even you think of people like SodaPoppin too. He was streaming on Xfire. Like, do you remember?
That's how he made it.
I almost guarantee anybody that's watching this video doesn't know what Xfire is. It was an old voice and like video, kind of like recording video platform way back in the day. It is way dead now. Like I used to sit in Xfire calls and have that program open when I played Battlefield 2142. And that game can't even run in 1080p. Like that is 720p locked, I'm pretty sure. Like I love that game to pieces. Please, DICE, remake that shit. But like that's how he got his start in World of Warcraft. And then he was like the first big streamer, and having 1,000 views was crazy. But now having 1,000 views is nothing. Like it's insane. Content creation is a extremely hard job. Like extremely hard. Kind of cycling back to just like gaming and stuff in general. You're talking about how TF2 and like CS was kind of your introduction to like really competitive kind of games. Were there any games before that? Did you have an original Xbox, PS1, PS2 kind of thing that you played a lot, or were you a kid that wasn't really into games when you were super young?
No, I've loved video games ever since I was a kid. Like I think this is an important factor to me as well, is I'm the youngest of 3 brothers.
Okay.
Because
how old are your brothers?
My older brother is 3 years older than me, 3.5 years older than me, and then I have a middle brother. So we're all pretty close in the grand scheme of things. So what happened was, like I got my first, Game Boy, and I played the shit out of Pokemon Red. Like I loved that game. And then we got a Nintendo 64, and I played Smash with my brothers and like all those kinds of games. And I was actually thinking about this recently. I've just, as a kid, always been obsessed with video games. Like every time I would go to a friend's place, every time I just wanted to play video games. Like I just always played them everywhere I went, and I played every video game and all that kind of stuff. So it's just been a big thing for me. It was just always like a waste of time, like in a lot of ways. But then you like don't realize that those skills end up translating into something.
Yeah.
I've always been in the shadow of my older brother as well. Like my oldest brother, my middle brother doesn't really play games, but my oldest brother, like he introduced me to Counter-Strike, and then all him and his friends used to play Counter-Strike. So I was the younger, annoying brother that always wanted to play with them, that they would only let me play if they had a spot, but I was always just waiting there. Like, oh, let me play with you guys. Because they're 3 years older than me, right? I was always outperforming my age, if that makes sense, because you're like, it's trial by fire. You're playing with people who are a lot smarter and a lot better than you.
They're going to dunk on you until you start half dunking on them. Yeah.
And that's it. And that's just sort of how it always was. And I think it was the most common in Counter-Strike. I was just really bad when I played with them, but then I just got better and better and better. Then I played a lot of Dota with those guys. They introduced me to Dota and stuff like that. So eventually, as I got older, like I just got better than them. Like over a long form of time, like all the games. And Team Fortress 2 was the first game that I ever they just stopped playing Team Fortress 2. And I was like, I'm just going to keep playing because I love this game. I ended up putting 5,000 hours into it. So, but yeah, I've always been video games. They've just always enamored me. I've always wanted to play them. Too much is almost certainly the answer though.
Yeah, too much. Speaking of which, my mum had a restriction on me and my brother for how many games or like how many hours we could play a day. And there was it sucked. And I still bring it up to my mum every now and then. I'm like, by the way, I play games 12 hours a day now, just to let you know. And obviously she doesn't care because I'm 29 and she doesn't give a shit.
Because I'm an adult.
Because I'm a fucking adult. But back in the day, Tuesdays and Thursdays were like the gaming days. So like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays we weren't allowed to play games. And it changed to like maybe an hour or two a day. And dude, but that's like console. So like in between those days, we were allowed to play our Game Boys. Don't know how that makes sense because it's basically the same thing. It makes zero sense. What's the difference me playing on controller? But then obviously I had friends like you, right? You want to go around their house, and I used to bring my Xbox to play Halo 2 or my 360 to play Halo 3, like either or, to go around and play LAN events and stuff like that. Like my best friend, I used to go to his house almost every weekend to play Halo 2. And we used to have all LAN parties around his house because his brother was also like mad into games. And first memory I have of his house is his brother's room, and it was just, oh my god, the PS2 game collection was just like from the top of the ceiling to the bottom of, to the floor, like all PS2 games. It was ridiculous. He had everything under the sun, which was like, he was older than us, and we were like, oh my god, they're so sick, they're so sick. It's really, it's definitely ingrained in you. And like you said, because you as well were playing with older people, like at the time, they were naturally, because of age and cognitive like thinking, they were better than you, but you eventually kind of, beating them, and then you carried on with TF2. Was there any point in time, because you used to watch a lot of StarCraft, and esports and Tastosis and all the casters and stuff, was there ever a point where you were like, one day I want to do that, or were you just kind of narrow focused into I want to play competitively?
No, I funnily enough, like I've never grown up being like talent is super cool to me, which is kind of interesting because I'm surrounded by a lot of people who have always been very talent orientated. Um, like yourself included. I've always been just so competitively focused. Like I've always wanted to be a player, and even to this day, like I do talent, but the thing that I love to do is to play ranked and just
Yeah.
like be better and compete and all that type of stuff. So that's one of the things that I love. But as I was a player, I think I realized how much I enjoy being talent, especially doing it live in this last year, doing casting with you, casting with Mitch, doing the desk at the finals in person, right? It really sort of raises that interest. And I think I really enjoy talent now and I really love it, but I cannot, say that this is something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be in esports and talent is a great way to be there. And I think I have a great skill set, especially for the Overwatch League talent of I was
Yeah,
a player, I've
for
been
sure.
in the scene forever. That really helps me get to that next step. So yeah, I've been really enjoying doing talent work, and I think it is a lot more complicated than people give it credit for.
Yeah, it is.
And I think there is a lot of nuances to it that I just didn't respect or understand when I was first stepping into this like world.
Yeah, it's very different from like grabbing random ranked Andy that's rank 350 on the ladder. Hey, you want to just cast this video game real quick? And he's like, huh? Like what?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot that kind of goes into it, and it's definitely a discussion that I've had with like Mitch a ton, and it's probably something we're going to talk about when I do this kind of thing with him as well. It's definitely interesting. It's a hard job. I would say it gets harder as you get higher. Like the more you move up, the nuances become super important.
Yeah.
And that is what kind of defines your style as a commentator or as a desk analyst or, whoever, like a host. It doesn't matter. Like you pick any role. There is a lot of nuance, and those things become super important. There's a base foundation that you need to get, and then you need to kind of build on top of that. And there's a lot that kind of goes into it. But then some people hate you because you're you. So, it's you can't please everybody. You know what I'm saying? You could be the best in the world, but like it's that's just the funniest to me.
That's the hardest thing about being, content creator, talent, player, all that kind of stuff that a lot of people
Fuck
don't
you
realize.
because of you.
Yeah, like there are people who don't like you just because you are who you are, or like you are successful, or you are doing things. You are going to get hate. You can be the nicest person in the world. I know a lot of people who are super nice, super kind, everything, and like people still just like send them death threats and be like frustrated at them and stuff like that. Like I saw Karib get a death threat. How are you going to send Karib a death threat?
Yeah,
like,
dude, he's the nicest human around.
He's such a genuine person, and like people are just assholes. So, and that's a hard thing that you have to deal with, as as someone in a public space is just dealing with criticism, unwarranted criticism as well.
Was there any point in your career where you maybe hit a low where you were getting a lot of that kind of that hate, and if so, like how did you deal with it?
I've always been pretty fortunate that I've never been the most popular. Like I will say that. Like I've never when I was a player, there was always players that were more popular than me, better than me, all that kind of stuff. And then, there's always just been people who are better than me, but I've always been, for the most part, liked by a lot of people, which is very fortunate because, I see what some other people have to deal with. But I also try not to make waves. Like I'm not trying to, I like to think I don't say anything stupid. I don't do anything bad. I'm not trying to hurt people. I'm not trying to like say things to be funny or piss off a group of people to be funny. Like, yeah, I do a bit of trolling on Plat Chat, and like, Dallas fans like kind of hate me. And if they seriously hate me, like, I don't care. Like, it's all just fun and games at this point. I respect Dallas. I love Dallas, like all those kind of things. But it is a meme, right? And you're going to have fun with it. But as I said, most people like me, but there are people who take it too far, right? Like I go to Dallas and all the Dallas fans are like, oh my God, we love you. We miss you on Dallas. And it's like, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But then there's always going to be that Dallas fan online who's like,
unhinged Dallas fan.
I fucking hate Custa. He was the worst player we had in the 2018 Dallas Fuel. And now all he ever does is talk about the San Francisco Shock and not the Dallas Fuel. And I really hate that. He's a simp. Like, who cares, right? Like, you got to be able to deal with thick skin. And I think there's a lot of players and people who haven't been able to deal with that. And who have also just been unwarrantedly hated by the public.
Yeah. It's definitely a big thing in esports. And something I think we've all kind of talked about either between each other or like on our streams and stuff, because the community and the players and the casters and everybody, production, whoever, like, is so ingrained in the community, it's very easy to kind of catch flack for like almost no reason, and it's very easy to kind of see that stuff too. Speaking of like esports jobs and whatnot, would you ever pivot away from talent, and like, would you want to move into a different role, maybe production, or like, you know, just something completely different if you feel like, you know, I'm kind of done with talent, or you feel, nah, I'm not as good as I kind of used to be? Is there another career path that you'd kind of go down after your talent journey has come to an end? If it does, obviously, because I know a lot of people just kind of want to do it until they die, you know, until they pass out. So, but if you had to pick something, or do you have something in mind that you'd rather do later down the line?
For me, I think it's unrealistic to be like, I'm going to do this forever. You know, I would love to be a player forever, but at some point, I just lost the passion to grind, right? And like, that was really 2019 was when I was like, hey, I'm done being an Overwatch player, because like, at some point, if you don't have that drive to be better, all you're going to do is fade into obscurity, right? So at some point, you have to make that step. And that exists with everything, with talent, right? Right now, I'm really like, I think, getting close to where I like the peak of my motivation that I've ever been for talent, to just be better and keep improving. So I will do this for a while, and you know, we'll see where that leads me. But I think, as for talent as well, it was worse with the player. Is being a talent, it consumes a lot of your life, and at some point, it's going to be unrealistic that you can do the hours that you're required to do the amount of travel that you need to do. Like, let's say, you know, I'm turning 30 this year. Fuck, I'm old. Like, at some point, I'm going to have kids. And maybe in 5 years, it's unrealistic that I can just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to, you know, I'm going to go to the East Coast for a week. And then, you know, oh yeah, then I'll have to go here for a week. And then I got, you know, a month off over here or stuff like that. Like, it could become problematic. For me, the one major thing that I want to do is I would love to get into game development in some way. I have a lot of knowledge about video games. I have played a lot of video games, and I've been a professional. I've done talent. I think I have a pretty good skill set in terms of like understanding community and like the gaming space as a whole and ecosystem as a whole. So I would love to get in that somehow. Like, I do bits and pieces with the Overwatch developers, and, you know, give a little bit of feedback here and there. But if I could find a way into there at some point, then I would love to do that. I don't really have any leads, but that's kind of what we talked about before, where it's like, opportunities will come in which I have the opportunity to sort of get lucky, or like find a path into it. So I'm just always keeping my eyes open, always taking any opportunities in which I can to further that.
So you'd still want to kind of stick in games then? It's not really something you want to get out of?
I fucking love video games. It's my my whole life as a whole. Like, I will never leave the gaming industry. I can absolutely see myself leaving esports. Esports is a black hole for hopes and dreams at some points. But I would love to stay in the gaming industry as much as I can. I have so many connections. I have so many friends in the gaming industry. It would take a lot for me to have to leave, or me to want to leave.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of people. Like, we're our own little space in esports. We're so minuscule compared to the wider gaming industry. But everybody in esports is like, yeah, I don't really want to go do finance shit at a random company. You know what I mean? I want to do gaming. Like, that's just who we are as people. When you
but esports is so volatile as well, right? Like, you see like the 100 Thieves news. Like, people are just dropping employees left and right. Like, it's really insane. It's a difficult time to be in esports, because I think we can all agree it's shrinking. I think it needed to shrink, but I think it is shrinking right now, and it'll be interesting to see how far it goes.
Yeah, any kind of venture capitalist industry that's not only esports. There's other industries out there that do rely on like VC stuff, especially in like the tech field. With the economy shrinking, it's all, you know, not shrinking, but, you know, it's on a downward trend at the moment because of inflation, etc., like war in Ukraine, like everything, right? Coronavirus, like literally everything could contribute to this fact. But when that kind of stuff shrinks, venture capital money doesn't really like to push into different fields that they're unfamiliar with, that might be kind of new territory. So it does kind of make sense why esports, at least for the time being, is kind of shrinking slightly. But if you look at the trajectory over the last 5 years, 10 years, it seems pretty evident that esports and gaming is just going to continue going up. It's just kind of a rough patch at the moment.
we said every kid has an iPad. Every kid is paying attention to
Exactly.
content creators,
Exactly.
video games, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's probably going to be the future of entertainment in a lot of ways. It's
Yeah.
only going to get better. I think it expanded too fast. And like as you said, if I'm a VC, I'm not investing maybe in games, but not esports. Like a lot of people lost a lot of money on esports in the last 5 years because everyone tried to expand so fast into these things without any way or knowledge of how to monetize it. Like the Overwatch League is a prime example. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way any Overwatch League team has made any money in the Overwatch League venture.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about like the investment, especially into Overwatch League or like even other leagues as well. To be fair, like LCK just kind of franchise too, or like no, I don't think it's called franchising. I think it's called something else, probably partnerships or something along those lines. It's quite interesting seeing across the board like how different leagues are handling that, which is quite funny too. Slightly off topic, but there's a esports. I think it's esports slash gaming, like ETF on the stock market, and like it invests in like esportsy kind of teams or like companies that are invested in esports. And like every other stock right now, it's down. It is down like that.
Well, doing in the red a little, you know.
Yeah, in the red a little, but then so is Spy, so is like VTI and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, the economy and just in general things like esports are going to shrink when the economy is going down. Kind of cycling back to working in esports or even playing. To be fair, you talked a little bit about it before, but who would you say your kind of biggest inspiration was going into competitive games? Was it someone like Huck, like competing at the highest level of StarCraft for the West in Korea, or who kind of was on your radar at the time, which made you kind of push into it?
I think inspirations always change from year to year,
Yeah.
because your goals as a player are always going to be moving on, right? When I was in TF2, I had a lot of respect for like a lot of the big boys in there, like Yuki and Tomo. Those guys were juggernauts of the Australian Team Fortress 2 scene. And, when I was watching StarCraft, I used to love watching Huck. I used to love watching Idra, like the
Idra,
Zerg
yeah.
player.
Oh,
He's the
hell yeah.
reason I played Zerg. Like I used to love watching those guys. But like personally, as I sort of grew, it's sort of I used to watch a lot of players. So when I was first playing Overwatch and like the big boys were starting to stand up, at first it was Chipsogen, right? Like Chipsogen was the best flex support in Europe, absolute dominant force. Then it turned to Jay Hong and Toby when the Lunatic High Rise and stuff like that. And then it just consistently keeps going. I think one of the most interesting things that I always had was when I was towards the end of 2018 on the Los Angeles Valley. That was probably one of the times that I was closest to. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. Like the people that
Okay.
I believe are above me aren't so far above me that I would call them someone that like I look up to. I would call them my peers. And like you're always looking at those people around you. I'm always watching VODs trying to take from them. But that was the time that I felt like I was the closest to the top I'd ever been. And then 2019 came, Lucio Meta came, and I was like, fuck. And my career sort of tumbled back down the hill as like there were so many great Lucio players that were just much better than I was. And that was a big learning experience to try and catch up to them. But now I would say like, I respect a lot of talent these days, and I do a lot of watching of talent and stuff like that. And we're fortunate in the Overwatch League to have someone like Mitch who is very good at what he does, and he also gives back to a lot of the other talent, loves to do VOD reviews and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And just working with you yourself, like you helped me a lot the couple of times that we've casted
Okay.
throughout this year. You've given me a lot of great feedback and a lot of work, and you've really helped elevate. Like we end up, we've never talked about this, but we ended up casting the Kickoff Clash finals
Yeah.
out of fucking nowhere. Like
Yeah.
obviously that I don't know how much we can talk about that.
That
but
was
like,
not supposed to be us, listeners.
We were
That was
not supposed to do the Kickoff Clash finals. What ended
by
up
the way-
happening is
And I was sick as shit, by the way.
Yeah,
I just
Jack
want to
was
bring
sick
that
as
up. Literally, our talent manager at the time, Alison, God bless you. God bless you.
Yeah.
She ran to CVS to get me throat sweets and like honey and everything because I was dying on that cast. I can't explain how much I was dying. I literally needed a bin next to me because I thought I was going to throw up. That shit blew, and I was sick for like 2 days after that. Like not COVID either. It was just like a random sickness. Not
yeah,
sure what the fuck it was.
it was just random stuff. But yeah, like I wasn't even supposed to be at that event until a
Yeah.
week before. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of things, and like I think that goes back into the what we talk about of like opportunity. Like it was lucky that I was able to cast a final of like a major tournament in the Overwatch League with almost no experience in casting, just because like I was in the right place at the right time and shit ended up hitting the fan. And that's you know it was an awesome experience. And I think that's, you know, the one bit of feedback that I would say. If you are watching this and you are want to be an esports player, talent, you want to make it in anything, it's almost certainly about putting yourself out there into
Yeah, for
uncomfortable
sure.
positions. You are going to be an imposter. You are going to feel like an imposter, like you don't deserve to be there. It is, as people say, fake it till you make it, and then put in the work. Like grind, put yourself in the best position to succeed. And when opportunities come, it's just about knocking it out of the park and like just following through. And that's the best way that you can make it in this industry.
Yeah. Everybody has imposter syndrome, by the way. Literally
Yeah.
everybody. I don't know a single
Mhm.
caster at the top level that doesn't have imposter syndrome. It's insane. It is rampant. And the people that don't have imposter syndrome, be careful of them.
Yeah.
Be very careful of them. It's it's a kind of a funny note. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, being in the right place at the right time definitely helps out sometimes. Like you going from not casting at all, although you did cast in 2020, I believe, or like maybe like one game with me, some dumb shit because someone DC'd.
Yeah.
But yeah, going straight into like a final like that is, or just an event like is kind of wild. But you know, it does end up paying mad dividends for you because you know you ended up learning a lot and you kind of use those skills later down the line. You know, if you want to cast again, which you know you kind of want to, and good, then you've already got things in your resume. Hey, I did this thing already. You know, even if it's not saying you're going to move to another game, but like if you did, you could be like, I casted the finals for this thing. It's just another kind of notch on the belt, which is always good, always good. And you were talking about giving advice. Go on, sorry.
So I that sort of like triggered something, which is another good part of
Yeah.
piece of feedback is the willingness to pivot. And like you just said that to like, would you go to another game? People ask me, it's like, would you go to another game? I'm like, maybe. If the opportunity ever came up and a game came out that I loved, I would do it. Valorant, I think every single talent, you would have been stupid, or every single player in talent, you should give every new AAA title a shot. And I think every one of us did. We all tried to play Valorant. We all had to look at it. We all had to look at the landscape. For talent, it was a shit show. And personally, I didn't enjoy playing the game, but you better believe I tried to see if like, would I enjoy this more than the Overwatch and the Overwatch League? And the answer was no. So I didn't do it. You always need to be willing to pivot. I had the same thing when I was a player in 2019. When I got benched in the first stage of 2019, that was like a big wake up call of like, you could have nothing at the drop of a hat, especially after what happened early in 2018 with Dallas Fuel. If I just never got off that team, I could potentially have never played in Overwatch League. But I was very fortunate to go to the Valiant, have success there, which ended up like pushing my career. But in 2019, I came back down. And that was like, I had my first meeting of, hey, maybe I should go into talent because I think this could be a better long term move and keep me moving forward. I had my first meeting halfway through 2019 in the middle of the season because even though I had another half of a season to play, I was like, I need to start putting my name in there. That was one of the ways I got the opportunity for 2020. And as I said, opportunity. I had a skill set. I knew what I could do. Sell yourself and then always be willing to pivot in that direction because you never know. Like if I waited till the end of 2019 to be like, oh, maybe I should have a meeting and talk, they could have been like, we don't have a
We've
spot.
already filled.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we've already filled it. They need to think so far ahead. So it's like you need to be thinking far ahead of what other people are looking for as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Looking far ahead. And in esports, that's sometimes kind of hard. It feels like you're sailing a ship into the storm. Like you can't really see that far ahead of you. You just kind of have to hope and pray a lightning bolt doesn't strike your ship and you go down, then you're homeless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you really do have to plan ahead, but in esports, you can't really do the like, oh, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. You're not in a company, you know, you're not trying to work your way up the corporate ladder. It's extremely different. And like, that's freelancing in general, to be fair, across the board, whether it's esports, whether it's literally anything. Like you could be a goddamn freelancing plumber and you might not be able to plan 5-10 years down the line because of whatever circumstances that may kind of crop up. I mean, you spoke a little bit about advice to casters right now, like players as well. Is there anything you would tell your younger self before getting into gaming and esports? Like what would be the one thing you'd tell, say your, I don't know, 15-year-old self? Or maybe even
this
older.
is not a good answer, but
okay.
I think it needs to be said.
Sure.
Well, no, it's a good answer, but I think it needs to be said. It's not what it seems in a lot of ways. I think it's one of those esports is a show at the end of the day. And as soon as you get to peek behind the curtain, you realize what a shit show it is. and that no one really has any idea what they're doing. And I think you need to wade carefully into that because there's a lot of things that are going on and it's nowhere near as coordinated. I've seen so many people get screwed. I've seen so many people who have the talent who just didn't make it because of the right opportunity. Um, the other thing that I would say, other than like, it's a bit of a shit show back here, is you should be nice to everybody. I think there's a lot of people who burn a lot of bridges, and burning a bridge never helps because I know a lot of people in this industry who people don't like and people won't work with and people won't talk with, not because they've ever talked to that person, but because the industry talks. And there is
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of
true.
people who I know who I don't like, who I've never talked to and never interacted in my life because I've heard so many stories. And I've seen people just burn bridges for no reason. I've seen people talk shit about people for no reason. I've seen people do it. It's like you're not in this little world where if you burn that bridge, oh, you're not in high school, right? Of like you piss off that guy, oh well, you move on with your lives later on. Like this is an industry as a whole, and you should consider it like a business, like one big fucking business that if you create problems, it will come back to haunt you in the past.
Yeah, and in ways that you might not even expect either.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is
absolutely.
which is the scariest thing because you don't know, and you will never know. I mean, I think anybody at this point, especially casters that have been around for a long time, or like talent in general, they've probably pissed off a couple of people and it's somehow bit them, but they don't know it. You know,
Yeah.
like it's a pretty terrifying prospect, I think, but it's also something you have to kind of navigate too. But yeah, I mean, just don't be a dick. I think we said this on the Johnny episode too. Just don't be a dick. Don't be a dick, and it ends up.
It's so easy to just not be an asshole. Like
ends
you
up
have to
working out
go
for
out
you.
of your way to be an asshole. This is true on the internet as a whole. Like regardless of what you're trying to accomplish, it's so easy to just not say anything.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
you don't need to. Like, but with that said, I think I've been very negative about esports with a lot of things. Like this is my words of warning. Like this is
Yeah.
as Jack said, you're going through the storm. If you want to take that voyage, you should. Like me and Jack can both attest that like we live the fucking dream. Like we get to play video
Yeah.
games
It's
every
scary,
day. It's
but
scary. Like but
yeah,
anything worth having is scary because
yeah,
like
that's
it's
true.
otherwise you're just not going to accomplish anything. If it was easy, everybody would do it. The classic line that everyone knows, right? Like it's scary, but we get to talk about the game that we love. We get to, cast it. We get to go on that stage. We get to, enjoy the league with you guys. And we get to play video games for a living. We stream,
It's
we
pretty
chill,
sick.
we have fun. We get to enjoy our lives. It is the best thing. It's a dream come true of 18-year-old Scott, right? But, it is going to be hard work. So if you're listening to this and you think about it, and I hope someone can listen to this and have the same level of inspiration or this entire podcast series because it sounds like it's going to be a lot of great insight. I watched Day 9 Daily number 100, and for anyone who knows what that is, like it's one of my all-time favorite videos because it's like Day 9 essentially doing what we're doing now of like how did I get to where I am now? And like he was just telling his life of like he was some 13-year-old nerdy kid who loved StarCraft and how he
Yeah.
ended up becoming one of the best players in the world, going on to talent and like all the pitfalls and all the successes that come from that. And if you really do love esports, it's probably dated, but you should go back and have a look at it because Day 9's one of the goats of this industry, and I think there's a lot of people in this industry who would say the same.
Yeah, it's crazy that you mentioned that because on the pure talent side of things, obviously Danon was a player of StarCraft at the time, right? D-Man, I remember watching his video on how to be a commentator, and I will tell you verbatim what the intro is. So you want to be an esports commentator. And it's a 15, I can't remember how long the video is. It's like 15, 20 minutes. It might be even longer of like how to become an esports commentator. And like nowadays and I'd say the same thing for being, well, maybe not the same thing, but kind of. There's a lot more content out there surrounding commentary, surrounding games, surrounding professional play. There's so much more of that nowadays. It's very easy to kind of access. And well, I would say actually, except on the casting side, which is a weird void, like a weird hole of like, no one really talks about that kind of stuff. And this is something I kind of want to get into, especially with like Mitch, and we'll talk about that on a different episode. But it's an interesting time now because it literally references what you spoke about a second ago. Every motherfucking kid has an iPad, dude. every kid is watching YouTube like day in, day out. Like it's kind of insane like how much content is being pushed out on a daily basis. And it's not, and this sounds very like, oh, back in my day, but you know, back in my day was like fucking 5 years ago. And people didn't really put a lot of content, especially around what Day 9 did or like what D-Man did. It's nuts. It is crazy how much more shit is out there now.
Also their stories, funny, like I'm sure D-Man can speak to this, like the way Artosis got his, Tasteless got his thing is like, no one else wanted to cast. Like they were just like, can anyone do it? And he was like, oh yeah, sure, I guess I can talk about it. Like that doesn't exist anymore. Like Valorant is the prime example of the last esport game that came out, and every Bob, Dick, and Harry and their grandma wanted to be a commentator for that game that created all this talent rift of like, there's just such a wealth of talent. So the landscape is changing. And I think if you want to have an idea of what you're going to need to do to break into the industry, I think Sideshow had a really good video 6 months to a year ago where he was sort of, Josh is the hardest working motherfucker in the industry, probably, right? Like the man, like as much as he's a meme and probably, you know, this gets said a lot, the stupidest smart person I know, like he is very good at what he does and his understanding of the industry. Go listen to what he does to be successful in Valorant while also trying to keep up to a successful stream. And that's what it takes at this point of esports and gaming industry to make it in this space.
It is extremely scary. I love it. We've just gone straight into like casting and like the meta of casting and like talent and stuff. I like that.
You know, that's what we both do now, right?
It's what we both do. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be. I hope this is going to repeat. I've also told
my story about being a player a lot, like, you know, in a lot of ways. So, like, you know, being a player is a completely different beast because I think there is a level of just like interesting because talent is kind of like there is no number that you can put on how successful you are or how good you are as a talent. While I think as a player, results is their main thing, and having that sort of tangible number of like ranked and success is like, it completely changes the landscape of how you like maneuver around that and just make it.
Yeah, it's too like, they're similar in one way in that they're very, very competitive for spots, but it's also very different. Yeah, it's very hard to tell someone, although obviously everybody's going to have their own favorite, and it's like, you are the best caster, you are my favorite caster, etc. And like, you know, individually, but as like on the grand scheme of things, how do you know if you're doing well? It's literally, it's peer review. That's it. Like casters know what casters are good, who is good, what other casters are good, and casters also know what casters are shit. Like that's just how it is.
And that's just like, I think it's kind of the same pitfall of being a player as well, right? Like if you're taking what your stream is saying to you, or like your fans or the people that like you for reasons outside of like what you're good at, it can be difficult to get like a true litmus test of how successful you are being, because as you said, I think peers are one of the best people and people that you respect, right? Like talking to people that you respect in the industry, I think goes a long way. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to do more as talent, is like just sort of talk to people who get it, because I have no idea what to do. I just have a great knowledge of Overwatch and I'm just trying to tell that to the people. But in terms of just raw mechanical talent as a talent, I definitely have a long way to go.
Yeah, and that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, baby. Oh, hell yeah. That small parasite in the back of your brain telling you that you are just absolute shit and you are no different from day one. Trust me, I've looked at my day one stuff. It's awful. I've never seen someone cast so poorly in my entire life. Good Lord. Good Lord. And it's funny because you said Tasteless kind of started, oh, does anybody want to cast? No one else wants to. Oh, Tasteless, you want to fucking cast? That was me with League of Legends tournaments. It's like, oh, can I cast your tournament? You're running it and you're streaming it, but there's no one talking over it. And they were like, can you do the stream? Well, I'll give you the stream key. Okay. Here's some overlays. All right. Okay. Sounds good to me. And I listen to him now. I'm like, holy shit. And I have some of those VODs, which is crazy. Oh, God. I've shown him on stream like once and I barely lasted like 2 minutes. Yeah. Because I'm just like, my co-caster can't say shit. I am just speaking over them. I just don't care. Like,
just never ready. That's actually a good piece of feedback as well, that I would say. If you're a player, if you're a talent, one of the biggest things that you can ever do that will make you better at what you do is reviewing your own gameplay. It is boring as batshit. It is frustrating, but watching tape is like, it is the most important thing. Just grinding and doing the same thing over and over again will not help you improve as much as just taking a step back and rewatching what you've done.
It's true. Yeah. Own, and then getting a third party opinion too, because they'll
Third
pick up
party
on
opinion
stuff.
goes a long way as
Yeah.
well, right?
There's a lot of small things you can kind of do. Kind of moving on, and before we wrap this, I wanted to talk about the actual game itself. I know, crazy. We're talking about Overwatch. Insane. This year, and I was thinking about this the other day, this year is the first full year of Overwatch 2. Like the first actual year. So we get to see how many patches we get, how many bits of content we get, like the Battle for Olympus, for example. We get to see how, like the winter events, if they're good, etc. Is there anything in the game right now you'd want to change or like actually want to see, like big features, not like small things like, oh, change the fucking charms or whatever, you know what I mean? Is there anything big that you'd actually want to see the game do to help it succeed?
I think one of the biggest things, especially in our space, right? Like, from like a casual perspective, I think the PvE is a long way, but in competitive, this has been like they've told us that this is in the works or coming for the last like 5 years, 6 years of like if they can get some way to have an in-game tournament that could lead to future open division tournaments that could then lead to success. Maybe with this new World Cup thing, something like that would come, but just promoting competitive or like team orientated structured gameplay that isn't just like loading into ranked, I think it would go a really long way in elevating Overwatch esports. Because one of the things that World Cup did so well is that it brought a lot of people who wouldn't have cared about Overwatch esports into the sphere and space of Overwatch League and stuff like that. But we haven't had that for a while. So it feels like instead of ever having a situation where we're gaining numbers, we're just always slowly losing people in the
Right.
sphere. And I think Overwatch 2 brought that in. You're always going to have an influx with Overwatch 2, and they have drops, which forces people to the competitive space. And people said that they've stuck around since then, which is great.
Hey, that's great.
Uh,
That's good.
but I think they need an incentive within the game to promote people like, oh, this game is fun to play competitive.
Yeah. It's definitely something that's been lacking, I think. I remember emailing the dev team and being like, hey, I outlined an entire like how it could work, like tournament structure and tournament system within the game that's like, a click away. And that's what people need, is they need it. We're in a generation now where people are consumed by TikTok, like 7-second videos, like instant gratification. You need a option in the menu that says tournament, and you need to click it, and it needs to be all presented for you. Invite teammates, invite friends or whatever. It can't be on a third-party website where it is not inaccessible, but the people that are going there, they specifically want to play higher-rated competitive. I remember someone coming into my stream chat the other day and saying, hey, it was like brand new viewer, and it's like, hey, how do I compete in Overwatch? And I said, well, like, what's your rank? Like, are you like a top 500 player? Or are you, a silver player that just wants to, improve in like a tournament system? And they were like, oh, like a Masters tank player. And I'm like, well, I mean, you could sign up for OD. And they're like, well, I don't really have that many friends that play competitively. And like, this is exactly what it will solve, is maybe it also kind of matches. You could also match with people too. There maybe could be like a random, like, oh, you can sign up and it kind of fills your team out and then you play with that team maybe. But I mentioned in a video I did, or I've recorded already, that the amount of Discords that open up that are like looking for team. Look, I'm a Masters tank player that looking for other Masters DPS and supports that could form a team for this month's tournament. And I think people really do need that accessibility to a tournament system, because ranked is nothing like competitive Overwatch. Like, good Lord.
And once you get high enough, you can't even do more than duo queue, right? So it's like, it's just it's a never-ending uphill battle, like, I think. And it's a consistent theme with Blizzard, and something that I think they need to get ahead of like, they need to be fixing systems that are dissuading people. And I think another one right now is the top 500 system of ranked is just,
it's not good.
It's awful. There is no reason or incentive to continue to keep grinding. You don't see a number that's going up and down, so it just feels like your number is just randomly changing. Once you win your 7 games, it's like, congratulations, you're still in top 500. And you're like, well, that's great, but I want to see a number go up and down. It'll help streamers. That incentivizes streamers to push, be competitive, which people love to watch. they need to fix that. And there's a bunch of systems that like that exist in Overwatch 2 that they need to be faster at reacting to. And I think in the past they've been very slow on it. And I'm worried that they're going to keep doing slow and people are just going to give up, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely a problem that I've realized now that I'm like in top 500, like solidly like GM1. And I'm like, wait a second, what the fuck's happening? Like,
nothing changes like ever, right? Like you're
have
just sort
a
of sitting there.
number. Yeah. And I can't go up anymore because I'm GM1. So it's like, so I win 7 games and then I go up. But then if I win 1 game, I don't go up. But then if I log on tomorrow, I'm down 5 places. Like what? I guess 5 people won 7 games and they moved up.
They passed you, yeah. And then like
guess that's okay.
And then there's the issue where people are the exact same rank, but the thing that is determining their factor is how high of a border that you have from Overwatch 1 and the number of levels that you get.
They did fix that.
Okay,
they fixed that last week, I believe. Yeah, because Cloudy made a very good video on it and said the reason why I'm rank 1, not because I'm rank 1, is because I have a platinum 5-star border on my main account. The guy below me has a silver border with 4 stars in Overwatch 1, and he might be better than me. But, well, not better, but like higher rated than me. And I can't really tell. It's definitely a problem I've realized is quite bad. And it's a good, Johnny actually made a good tweet because I said 7 wins is too much. Maybe 5 is good. And maybe 10 losses is good too, you know? And he was like, well, we're just, you know, you're moving the goalposts, but why not just move it all the way back to Overwatch 1? Like, why do it in small increments?
Well, I do know a lot of people that have been who enjoy the new rank system of like, a lot of people don't want to see the instant response of the win and loss, right? That had a lot of anxiety to a lot of people, and I can understand why this system exists for the casual player base. But my thing is like, once you're in top 500, there is nobody in top 500 who's like, I don't want to see my number. Like everyone wants to see that number. And you know, I brought it up on, I think it was Plat Chat recently with you, and I was like, they should just have a system like Apex where once you get to the premium rank, then you're sort of like unlocking a new system that exists on its own outside of that the number goes up, the rank goes up, and that kind of stuff, and you can see it happen. Because I would assume the 5-win or 7-win system is not built for the top end of competitive.
It's not. It is. I think it is built for the. To be fair though, that's built for the majority of the player base. So you can kind of see why they went in that direction with the change to ranked. And I think Apex is a very good example. You hit Masters, and then you just have RP, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't have... Well, technically, you're 0 RP and Iron 5. I can't remember the ranks. And then you just, like, continue to go up. So technically, Apex is a little bit different. But, yeah, like, as soon as you hit Masters, you just have your number visible. And I think if you hit GM5, you should just have your number visible. But then it's like, why not just do it for all the ranks? You know, like, so it's a bit of a slippery slope, I think. So a tournament structure obviously would be extremely good for the game moving forward. You know, depending on how long Blizzard kind of take to implement this kind of system, because they've been talking about it, or at least it's been in the dreams of people for a long time now, which is a bit of an issue. All right, Scott, I think that's going to wrap it up. Hour and 20. Good chat. Is there anything you kind of want to shout out or like talk about or whatnot? You can just feel free, take the floor.
I've hit a lot of the key beats, and I think I would just reiterate a lot of those, while also stating that it's a really cool job that we have. It's a cool thing to go for, and we've accomplished, and we both live in LA now from like our respective Commonwealth countries, and we've been able to, grow and change as people. So it's a noble goal, and if you want to do it, absolutely. But if you're half-hearted on it, or you're so far behind the game. I've had people who are like, I'm 25, I'm a diamond Overwatch player, I want to be in the Overwatch League. I don't want to have to let you down like this, but you're not going to make it at this point because you're so far behind the 8 ball. And if you're like that, I'm sorry, that is my opinion. You can try and prove me wrong, but you're better off putting your time and effort into something, because to truly make it in this industry, it has to be the only thing that you want to do. It has to be the thing that you've always loved to do. I've always loved to play video games. I've always wanted to be competitive. And that is one of the reasons I think I got there. I've been honing the skill set since I was like 12.
Yeah.
And I think almost everyone would be like that, whoever ends up making it. So if you're going to go for it, make sure to full send. I dropped out of college and it worked out great for me. So Drop out of college.
Okay, that's not okay. Definitely get an education. I didn't drop out, but I finished my degree and then I fucked it off. So, finish your education if you're in school, kids. Don't forget that. 10,000 hours it takes to be a master at something, a master at your craft. You may be only a couple of thousand hours deep. So, yeah, but it is a tough industry. The funnel gets very thin as you move near the top. That is for sure. There are a lot of sick Overwatch League players that aren't in the league or might not be in the league this year. So, yeah. Pretty ridiculous. All right, well, Scott, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. It's been a good one. I was excited to actually hear your story of how you grew up and like gaming and stuff. I always find that stuff super interesting. So thank you so much for sharing. You can check out Scott's Twitter and Twitch and everything. I'll put the links in the description. And other than that, I'll see you guys later. There you go. Custa up there. Bada bing, bada bing. See you soon.